Hell let loose. I think that's all I have to say. It's going interesting. After the massive disaster of, well, the trailers that were released, the British update that wasn't quite up to par, we now actually have some changes from the development making their way in. They even did an Ask Me Anything over on their Reddit to actually decide the future and get some feedback from the fans themselves. So I thought I'd bring you guys the best bits and my understanding where the Hell Let Loose devs are actually planning on taking this. So it is nice that they are communicating in this way. Having such a big team like Team 17 taking over development is always going to be a bit tricky at the start, and despite my mostly negative videos, I do have hope that the words they are saying are positive. Obviously, words don't mean anything if you carry on destroying things, but we can see that in the future. First of all, iSpectre asks, what are your plans for artillery within the game? Are there any ideas of how to change it, tweak it, or balance artillery and the recon game loop that's been present? I think this is very important because artillery hasn't had much updates, well, in years. It kind of was introduced and then stuck around. I don't think it's particularly useless, but you don't see that many people coordinating and using artillery, at least in public games. I'm sure private events are a completely different affair. But the Hell Let Loose community manager responded. We understand this is a big topic amongst players and we're looking at different solutions for artillery, including self-propelled artillery, smaller pieces, and mortars. Now, these are the three additions that I think are so important. Self-propelled artillery, I'm not entirely sure are going to be used effectively by players. I'd assume most people would just start using them like tanks, so I'm not entirely convinced by that working in a game setting. Of course, we have anti-tank guns that can be placed down, but mortars 100%. Being able to bring them in with your squad, set them down in positions and use them to break enemy defenses. This would especially be good on maps like Kursk or even Stalingrad, where it is a bit slower, there's not too much movement and people are stagnating around some areas. It will help free those things up. My main thoughts on this is the train depot point on Stalingrad that has always been a bit of a kill box, and once someone takes it, it's very hard to take it back from the enemy team. So having something that can break that deadlock, that can cause a bit more damage from a further away moment, that means you don't have to have too much coordination with the tanks, because we know how public games go. Some people just don't do that. Are there any plans for new emplacements like sandbags, MG nests, observation towers, etc.? The response is that they will be coming in very soon with various new weapon systems. The German tripod systems for MGs, and I know from a previous developer update that MG points and nests are going to be an addition. Much like an engineer that's able to put down anti-tank guns, you're going to be able to do that with MG nests, and that is a massive win, I think. Being able to hold lines and hedges as people running across fields is already possible if you have a light machine gunner within your clan or squad, but having an actual emplacement that can be built that any unit or any troop can use is going to be a massive advantage. They of course will have the drawback of being stationary, so you can't move from position to position, or at least not quickly, and will be a massive target to things like tank shells and HE rounds, but being able to hold things like windows or even field hedge lines is going to be really, really important, especially for more open maps like the new El Alamein. But then we get onto the question that I saw. This is the one that made me actually want to make this video because I thought it was quite funny, and the response was also quite funny as well. Dear Replacement said, what was the thought process behind the very infamous German trailer? And the first reply is a guy saying there's no chance they touched this question, but they did. Hell Let Loose and its community manager actually came back with a very, very, I think, idealistic response. They did a good job here. The story behind the trailer going live isn't as exciting as you'd believe. This trailer was outsourced to a new partner agency with a too short deadline. And to be honest, the checks that should have been carried out on quality of the assets and historical accuracy did not happen. That is kind of funny that they're admitting to that, but also that is a huge red flag. And that is just the statement that shows that Hell Let Loose, at least at the moment, have no idea where this game is going. The fact that they didn't even really bother to check whether stuff was historically accurate or whether the assets actually looked anything like the game, because I think that was the main thing. Most people were saying, why does this trailer look so much worse than gameplay? It made no sense. They almost did the anti-Ubisoft, which some people might think is a positive, but in this case was an absolute disaster. The mistakes have been learned from and acted upon, with our internal trailer team, which had worked on the majority of previous trailers, being brought back onto the project. It definitely worries me why they were taken off in the first place for such a big announcement for PC Gamer. They knew millions of people would see this. That trailer is not a representation of Hell Let Loose or the dedication and care the team applies to everything they do with regard to the title, and will never put an asset of that quality out ever again. I'm very glad that they're being open and honest. Unfortunately, in some cases, like this one, their brutal honesty shoots up a few more red flags. Where is their quality assurance? Where is their historical accuracy department? Are they letting that slip? Well, hopefully after this mistake, they'll be bringing that back on. They did also go on later to say that the first internal reaction was a lot of swearing and a lot of anger. But unfortunately, when you're such a big development team like Team 17, you stop having those nuanced discussions in terms of, should we release this? Can we release this? It is a ever-looming deadline of millions of dollars are now a part of this game development. They can't just say, oh, we're going to miss that deadline. And unfortunately, that is one of the biggest disadvantages of having such an inflexible development process. Now Team 17 are on board. And this was the first pin in the dartboard that showed this might not be the direction we want to go. This could be a change though, and that's what I'm really hoping, and the fact that they're being brutally honest is nice. Then we go onto the arsenal for the British faction. People talking about why it wasn't as historically accurate. What went wrong then? Because it made no sense how we'd had so many authentic recreations of all the factions within Hell Let Loose, but then when they brought out the British, it just seemed like they chucked together some very loosely researched stuff on the game. The British forces were originally delivered in the same way previous forces had been brought into the game. We're exceptionally keen as a studio to move forward towards historical accuracy and have plans to improve the British forces. That's what they said on their final dev brief, but if we actually go into the AMA itself, it gives a more in-depth discussion. And the community manager says essentially it's just time. They were working on a deadline because they'd already said that the British forces were going to be within the game. And honestly, part of this isn't Team 17's fault, because I think the British forces was a mix of collaboration between when it was owned by Black Matter and then the crossover to Team 17 once it was bought out. They said that they were working with files that was inherited and weren't entirely sure what was going on. They of course say it's no excuse and we own the mistake as a publisher, but they're striving to make the Brits have a better and more accurate arsenal in the future. I think it all just comes down to time. Having these set deadlines by being way less flexible with development means that time and time again we're seeing lower quality, whether it's historical accuracy or plain shitty graphics and terrible assets in trailers. They have also gone on to state some of the extra things that will be added in. They're currently looking into completely overhauling and change the way that medics use, because medics are used more than Battlefield, but that's about as much as I can say about it. I don't even know if that's even stating all that much. They've been looking into it in the background and have a design for medics to now be able to drag wounded players into better positions, which is a fantastic addition. I don't know how much this is going to take, since that's a very big mechanical change, but as the moment, it's actually often quicker just to respawn if you get downed rather than wait for a medic, unless you have an incredibly passionate player on one team. So it is nice that they're going to add more things that medics can do, be able to drag you into positions, make it easier to revive, and hopefully, I would say, let any player do that. I think that's going to be the best addition. Not just have medics be able to drag a wounded player, but anyone on your squad or any teammate to be able to pick you up and put you to the side, a bit like armor. It adds that realism, and it also means that medics are able to do their job. People don't respawn as much because they can be moved to safer positions until the medic can get over in time. I mean, that could probably be abused in some funny ways, but I'm definitely down for it. The community manager also stated that they're looking to offer specific uniforms for maps, including more accurate British and German uniforms for North Africa, and also making weapons and armor specific vehicles for maps, which I think is going to be a huge change, and also is going to take a lot of effort. But at least it means that they're using the resources that the purchase that Team 17 did for good, at least this time. Having certain weapons and vehicles that are only in something like El Alamein, that only fought on the North African frontier, will add a new dynamic and make people actually want to play those games. Because at the moment, whether you're playing or whether the server picks a map is solely on the nature of that map. So if you have something like El Alamein, which is a kind of shitty map for the gameplay style people are used to, maybe people will be more convinced to play it if there is different weapons, different half tracks that people can use to get around this more open map better. I think that's going to be a really good plan for at least bringing in some of the less used maps like Purple Heart Lane or Remagan back into the rotation. And then one of the final things I think is pretty exciting, and this is an engine upgrade. They have said that they wanted to address it because they'll be assessing how they can deliver the best version of Hell Let Loose. There was talks in the past of maybe a Hell Let Loose sequel, but definitely after this update and Hell Let Loose and Team 17 changing the way that they approach development, I think we're going to be sticking and updating the first game as much as possible. But they have said that in course there will be issues and optimization and bug fixing, but if it is possible, they have began exploring to a new E5 upgrade, potentially going on to the next version of Unreal Engine. And boy, this is going to be years and years down the line, if it's even possible. There's a very high chance that it's not even possible. But the things that that engine can bring, not just with lighting and graphics, but more specifically mechanically, being able to do things like switch weapon firing modes, being able to have more destructible terrain. I say more, there isn't any in Hell Let Loose. That would be a massive improvement, but almost not needing a sequel to this game. Just taking the base game, upgrading it with all the features and content that's been added over the years, and then putting it into a new engine with destructible terrain, with better ways of communicating, with better lighting, and all in all, essentially releasing a new game as an update. That would be the perfect future for Hell Let Loose. But once again, this is all talk so far. They have released this all as a succinct developer blog, so you can click the link in the description if you want to go and check out how they decided to package it down. But I wanted to actually go on the Reddit and the AMA so I could get their raw, authentic answers before it goes through the corporate overlords at Team 17 to make it a bit more concise. So I hope you guys appreciate that, but their version is definitely down in the description. But I'm going to be bringing more updates of Hell Let Loose, especially in this very tumultuous time of game development, so make sure you stick around for that.